So at the time of the release of this episode, we are just 2 days away from Church Advance 2023. And you might be wondering, is there still time to register? And the answer is actually yes, but you've got to do it soon because space is running out. But we'd still love to have you join us as we hear awesome preaching from H.B. Charles, Carrie Schmidt, Kurt Skelly, and of course, Bryan Sams. We really would love you and other leaders at your church to attend, so make sure you get registered for this year's Church Advance, which again begins on February 8th in just a couple days. Get registered at bryansams.com. That's bryansams.com. Get registered for Church Advance. Well, now let's get to the main content of this episode as we continue to advance a reformation of fellowship, partnership, and gospel hope. This is Church Advance with Bryan Sams.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Church Advance podcast with Bryan Sams. Here with my man Luke Clayton, right here from the headquarters in Jacksonville, Florida.
Yes, yeah.
Thanks for coming down for a couple days, Luke.
Hey, it's been good to be here. I mean, it's throwing me off. It's supposed to be kind of the cooler months here, but it is. I got here and it was like 80-something degrees.
It's about 82 today.
Yeah, so.
We're in November recording right now. I mean, and you know what? I love it here. That's why we have the Church Advance Conference in February.
Oh yeah.
We said, we want people to come for the content, but we also want people to come to Florida.
Yeah.
Endless summer is how they say Florida. Yeah. I love it, and it would take a whole lot to get me out of here.
Yeah. Well, hey, it is good. Of course, I'm from the Nashville, Tennessee area.
Yeah.
And I love the weather there.
You love country music?
No. I never got into that. Yeah. I'm too spiritual for
I'm just going to honestly tell you. I'm just going to admit right here on the air.
Oh, here it is.
I do. I like country music. Sorry, everybody. I know that's a great disappointment. And somebody's going to be listening to this episode
canceled.
Going, they're going to be saying, one thing leads to another.
Yeah. King James
country music. Yeah, the truth is I've liked country music since I was a kid in West Virginia. So anyways.
Yeah, nice.
And but y'all can judge me on that all day long. So join us here in beautiful Florida in February. This may be over.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think of when this is going to release.
Can you cut out what we're doing right now?
The cover. I mean, I could if I wanted to. But either way, it can be a promo for the next cover.
Oh, absolutely.
Or one of the virtual ones.
Yeah, okay.
So,
yeah.
I mean,
you need to come to Church Advance.
Yeah,
bottom
be at
line.
Church Advance, whether it's in person, whether it's 2023,
man,
2024.
I'm getting confused. It's been a long day, and I'm getting confused
we have beasted out a lot of content.
Anyways, so here we are. We're on part 2 of the subject, the translation transition, built off of not just the philosophy of needing to do a translation transition that in my life, but how did I do it?
Yeah.
What were the steps? And so I was asked to do a talk some time ago with Josh Tyson, Idea Network, formulated some content, wanted to bring it to our audience here. And so let's review real quick. We got 8 steps to changing the translation in your church.
Yeah. So what we started last episode, go back, listen to kind of the introductory thoughts. We kind of revisited the why. Why would you do this? Why would you not just say, I'll let the next guy worry about it? That was really good that we revisited that. But then we moved into steps 1 and 2. First step, formulate clear biblical convictions on bibliology. And then number 2, be sensitive to your unique ministry context, and that's kind of where we left off. So I think should we just dive into step 3?
Man, let's go.
Step 3 is have private discussions with key leaders and influencers.
Yeah. So this is a Nehemiah principle. I mean, this is a biblical principle of leadership. This is getting a consensus. I think it would be arrogant for me to push major change on the church without having my people with me. Yeah. And the way that starts is with private discussions with key members and influencers. So Nehemiah in chapter number 2, first of all, in chapter 1, he hears about the destruction of Jerusalem from one of his brothers. Then he prays and repents, and then basically asks for leave to go there. And in chapter 2, he arrives. He arrives from his position as king's cupbearer, travels all the way to Jerusalem. And the Bible is interesting. The Bible says that he took a few men with him and basically went to all the gates, went to the wall, and did it privately, didn't make a public announcement about this. And then in verse 17, I think it's chapter 2 of Nehemiah, he says, you see the distress we're in. Mm-hmm. He didn't just try to announce it. He didn't get up and discourse it. He took a select group of men with him and showed them. Yeah. And then by showing them, they owned it. Yeah. And then they could together lead it. That's biblical leadership. Yeah. So in my context, at the time when I was starting to work through this, our church was still King James only. I wasn't King James only. Our church was. And our members, for the most part, were. Now by that time, we are having lots of new people come. Yeah. And the church is no longer that IFB brand. Mm-hmm. It didn't look or feel like an IFB church. By that time, we were in our talks with the Southern Baptist Convention, which ultimately we went into as well, which is no doubt the more content we need to come up with.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we also then, as I was sorting through this, I said, I have got to start getting a feel. Because I remember when I go back to my first Sunday, my Q&A time to become pastor of River City, I could tell all the people wanted was their church to grow. That's what they kept saying. We think you can grow our church. We think you can grow our church. And I said, so then I asked this question. This is to the Q&A. It's like 30 people there, Saturday night, the night before I am going to be voted on. Yeah. I said, let me ask you guys a question. What are you not willing to change? Like, you're asking me what I will do to change. My question for you is, what are you not willing to do? And one was the King James. And so I knew, now I'm 3 years in. Yeah. And most of those people are already gone. Yeah. So I'm thinking, okay, well, there are still people. There are currently at our church about 12 members that were original members. So we have, at this recording, 230 members, 12 of them original. So that's the church growth as far as membership. Well, so one of the men is the first guy I met at the church named Greg. And Greg is currently our senior adult minister. Yeah. And so I said, one night we had a deacons meeting. Greg was a deacon at the time. I moved him over to elder, pastor. He's got shepherding gifts. And I sat down. He's got a grandson that he's raised named Dylan, who's the same age as my daughter, Adriana. They go to school together. Mm-hmm. Greg, and Dylan has showed interest in pastoral ministry or ministry. He goes to private school. I don't know what's going to necessarily become of him. I'm not sure, but... So I sat down with Greg one night after Deacons. I said, Greg, can I just ask you a question? I said, if Dylan were to be the pastor of this church after me, would you feel like he would absolutely have to use the King James in order for you to support him? And he said, no, I don't think so. Wow. Now, 3 years before, he's one of those guys going, we're not changing the Bible. Yeah. We're King James only. Yeah. Okay. 3 years of my teaching, 3 years of my preaching, 3 years of seeing souls saved, 3 years of seeing miracles. He's going, you know what? And then put it in that perspective. Is this a conviction that you'd separate over your grandson over? Yeah. Now, assume if I would have asked if your grandson denies the virgin birth of Jesus, are you going to still go to his church? I know I would say no. Yeah. But if your grandson is going to use a new translation of the Bible, well, when I saw that crack, I said, oh boy, that's one of the key lifelong King James people. And I began to realize that these people are not King James by conviction. They're King James because this is what they've always been told they were supposed to be. So I realized there's some room here. Yeah. And I had more conversations. Of course, all of our pastors who were already with me, youth pastor, assistant pastor, Aaron, Eric McKay at the time, they were with me. Yeah, that wasn't going to be a problem. In fact, most of the deacons by that time had been replaced. I knew the people that had official positions in the church, they were with me. So, but I had to have those private discussions with a few of them to test the waters and see where we're at, which leads me really to number 4. And number 4 on our list is step 4. So you formulate biblical convictions, you are sensitive to your ministry context, you have private discussions with key leaders and influencers. Number 4, gently lead your men through a Bible study. Yeah. Okay. Gently is a very important word here.
Yes, a key adjective there.
It's not my bent. I am more like, ram it through, man. Yeah, like, this is what I want to do. Why? Let's do it. Yeah. But I also realize that doesn't necessarily mean that's always good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there's something to be said, too, about the idea of having someone almost, it's like that guided discovery process.
Yep.
You know, when somebody, and if you think about it, this is why they're in this position in the first place. Yep. They have had this essentially forced down their throats.
Right.
In their upbringing, that this is the only translation that's acceptable, all others are perversions and so forth.
Right.
But when you can allow them to come to it on their own almost,
right.
you know, you're using scripture and guiding them, but it's that guided discovery process. That in general, that approach in general, in all things, it's much more, well, it's true change.
Yeah.
It's not, hey, you're going to be like me, you're going to conform. No, it's true transformation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Men, we are to be, pastors, guys, we're to be teachers, equippers. I have whittled down my responsibility at church to 3 things. I am to preach the Bible, pray, and train leaders. Yeah. My job. That's all I do. Here at River City Baptist Church, that is all I do. I teach the Bible, I pray, and I train leaders. And I've got tangible evidences of all 3.
Nice.
I could take you to all 3. This is what my time is spent doing. So I'm supposed to teach my men. I'm supposed to teach my leaders. So here, first of all, let me talk about the method. How did I do this? I did it on Wednesday night. I did a series. There were other Bible studies going on campus. I hand chose a group of men. I want to say there were about 20 men at this point. Now again, I had a couple pastoral staff. I had a few deacons. This is now outside of that, 12 to 15 extra men invited to a Wednesday night Bible study. So we were already gathering. It wasn't that awkward to have a men's gathering, a specific class. So, but this is interesting. Here's what I did. I invited them to come, and I made sure that I invited a broad swath of people. So I had those men that were King James only.
Yeah.
I had a couple kids from Pensacola that I wasn't sure where they were. We have probably 4 or 5 graduate couples from Pensacola that moved to Jacksonville for work, ended up joining our church. Yeah. And you never know. I mean, Pensacola Christian College has been traditionally strong on this. Yeah. And I was like, well, I don't know what they think. And then, of course, I had a handful of new people from the church that carried New American Standards with them when they walked in the door. So I had this whole broad group of people. I intentionally did that. I didn't want yes men. I didn't want to just bring all the new, young, ESV loving, torn jean wearing, casting crown listening, which is a lot of people in my church.
Yeah, sure.
But I wanted everybody, a sampling from all groups, and I brought them in. And I think it was 5 weeks. I don't know. I remember the exact time. Over 5 weeks, we talked through the following topics, which was, of course, theology. We did theology. We did history, translation history and the controversy. Yeah. Then we did readability. And the whole time, the group read Mark Ward's book. Night 1, I handed it all out to them. The first night, I stood up and said, guys, I'm just going to tell you up front what this is about. I believe God is leading me to change the translation of our church. Yeah. And I want us to talk about it, and I want you to read about it, and we're going to do this together.
I got to ask, what was the feel of the room when you brought that?
Yeah.
Because you said there's a variety of people, people you know where they're at, people you don't know. So what was
initially, I thought it was very positive. Okay. But I also knew there were a couple guys, it was very challenging for them. I mean, it was. I could tell. And I had to be okay with that. I had to be okay that Dave Andrews, as an example, a deacon in my church today, who yesterday at church walked in with a suit, the only guy with a suit and a tie. There's one of them. He's in his 70s. One man in this church wears a suit and tie, Dave. Yeah. And Dave has told me this, Pastor, I literally think I am supposed to wear a suit and tie to church. And you know what I say? Great. Yeah. Wear a suit and tie, man.
Sure.
Dave, if I wear a polo, it's not anything about you. That's my choice, not your choice. So Dave, I knew it was going to be hard for him. Greg, the same guy I mentioned, I could tell, processing. I fortunately found out later that a couple of Pensacola guys they were not there. It wasn't a big deal to them. Yeah. There was another one of my deacons that was in the meeting named Randy that I just didn't know his background. He's kind of traditional, but he was with me. And so by the time we got into like 3rd or 4th week, I could tell it was people were absorbing this. And so I taught theology, history, readability, and then we discussed points. And then, of course, toward the end, when we bogged down in readability a little bit, and I started talking through Mark Ward's chapters, things like false friends, the words you can't understand, false friends, words you think you understand that you don't actually understand. Yeah, so I walked through all of that with them, case by case by case by case. And then the final lesson was on why I would want to go to the New King James, which later I shared with the church. But that would be the first. That would be the leading the men gently through the Bible study. Yeah. And it was sweet, man. It was sweet. And I want to tie this together with the next one. So what do you got down for number 5?
Yeah, so number 5 is going to be to commit to absolute unanimous consensus.
With that group.
Yes, with the group that you
That's
led through
right.
the study. Okay,
That's right. Not the church.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. First of all,
Well, unanimous in a church.
unanimous in a church. Is anything else need to be said?
Yeah.
Secondly, if I have to lead with unanimous consent, I'm not leading. If I can't bring people to my position or allow people to walk away who just can't stomach it, then I'm not a leader.
Yeah.
I mean, since when did we lead through consensus? We don't lead through consensus. We lead through conviction. We lead through clarity. We lead through showing people the way, knowing, like Maxwell said, know the way, go the way, show the way. That's what we do. That's what leaders do. And so I don't ever want to lead by, consensus. Now, there are certain people that I want consensus with. Unanimous, absolute consensus. So 2 things happen, okay? 2 things. 1, on day 1, before I started the Bible study, when I was introducing the concept, I said before I even started, guys, I'm telling you, 5 weeks from now, 6 weeks from now, because I didn't have a plan.
Yeah.
It was just going to be however long it needs to take us to sort this out. I think it ended up being 5 or 6 weeks. I said, from day 1, I am not going to do this unless every man in this room is with me.
Wow.
So, and if you're not with me, either we'll stop or we'll keep talking.
Yeah.
Day 1. Okay, then the final day, when I had taught everything I felt like I needed to teach, when I had asked for questions for the last time, I said, guys, the next thing that's going to happen is I'm going to take this to the church. And I'm going to preach and teach the church. And you're going to vote right now. Because I'm going to say the leaders and many of the key men in this church are unanimously behind me on this.
Yeah, well, yeah. There's got to be a lot, there's a lot of power in giving others power, if you will. I mean, just again, thinking leadership in general. Like, I know there's people out there that are thinking, oh no, that would ruin it. But when you give someone that, and you realize, hey, this is a big deal, and you're a part of it. I mean, I can only imagine how, because then there's a sense of, yeah, we are the leaders here.
Yeah.
And just playing to that, that's pretty powerful.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's a lot of leadership concepts being peppered into this talk here.
Sure.
But that's what it is. I mean, you're leading a church through a transition. And we're going to talk more about leading change. And I've had a conversation with Josh Tice on our podcast a couple years back, and more generally. But what about, the many things that need to be changed? We did a month or so ago the book, Best Books 2022.
Oh, yeah.
And you mentioned Craig Groeschel's book.
Lead Like It Matters.
And you said that basically the thing he said was, if you're doing things like you've always done, you're failing.
Yeah. Well, I've heard it said by a rather, and I don't know if it's an original to him, but a rather upstanding or I don't know, famous independent Baptist leader, that a growing church is always in transition.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I've heard that many times from him.
And I know him well, and I know that what he was talking about was methods.
Yeah.
It could be schedules, it could be this, it could be that, it didn't matter, but he was definitely talking about not doing things the exact same way you had done them.
Yep.
And we have to, first of all, we have to be there. We have to give other people flexibility to do it.
Sure.
And as a pastor leader, my goodness, if you can't do this basic thing, if you can't encourage people, teach people, and then lead them to follow you, And be willing to be disagreed with.
Yeah.
If you need affirmation, yes, men. If you can't handle somebody not supporting a decision that you make, then you're not in the right business.
So in this case, I'm assuming you were able to get that unanimous consent.
Right then and there on that Wednesday night, I called for it.
Now let me ask, what if it was literally like you said, about 20 guys? I mean, what if you were looking at 19, 18 out of 20?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because that's gotta, if
happened.
somebody is going through this process, that's bound to happen.
I would have been true to my word, and I would have said in the meeting, hey, I'm going to table this for now.
Yeah.
We're going to come back next week, and I'm going to, in between now and next week, I'm going to have dinner with Dave, and I'm going to have dinner with Ronnie.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk this out.
Yeah.
And we're going to come to a conclusion as to what is their hang up, and how can I help? And then I wrote this down as a sub note here. At this point, you will know if you need to stay or change or move on.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take this. Let's tease this out. So I go with Ronnie and Dave, and I sat down, and Dave basically says, Pastor, I can't be in a church not King James. Okay, but let's say he says, but I'm not going to get in your way, and I'm not going to harm you. And I would say, well, Dave, I really don't want to make this decision without you. But if you're basically saying, threatening essentially me that, I mean, there's no other thing to talk about, you're just committed, then I will hold on it for your sake. But I want you to know that if you leave or if you decide another church is better for you, I'm going to make this change immediately.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. I think their spirit has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Because I can't be given ultimatums.
Yeah.
I had a lady one time call me on this subject. This was in the middle of our church split in 2019. She said, "Did you know you had a guy here that spoke without it was talking about HB.
Yeah.
You preached that King James. Doesn't that bother you?" And I said, "No, it doesn't bother me at all." She said, "Well, I'll tell you, if we change that, that's a done deal." She said that word to me, and I said, I won't say her name, but I said, "You'll be gone, because if you're not going to ultimatum me here, you're going to ultimatum me somewhere else."
Yeah.
So I'll make it clear to that guy, I'm trying to bring you here. We're going to try to get here. I'll be patient with you. I'll hold this, but this is where we're going here. Ultimately.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then now there are other. If it was more severe, like half the room, then I got to decide: am I going to change where I'm going, or am I going to change ministry?
Yeah.
At this point, because at this point you're already there.
Yeah.
You're not going to hold up.
Because I was going to say, at this point, if you've got one or two naysayers, somebody's leaving.
Somebody's
whether
leaving.
it's them or whether it's you.
Absolutely.
And I think, you talk about that lady that comes to you and says that way back in the day. Understand that whether it's translation issue or whatever, this is something that unfortunately exists in many denominations, not just Independent Baptist. Is this somehow we got this mindset that the church is about meeting my needs, where really the church is about meeting the needs of your community and those around you. And so I just don't see how that mindset in any capacity really can last in a church that's truly missional and reaching
Right, exactly.
others.
And teasing it out another way, in a good way, the same guy could say, "Pastor, I don't think I'll be able to make it, but I don't want to hold you up.
Yeah.
If this is where you want to go, I will find a way to quietly walk away."
Yeah.
And at that point, maybe we could agree this might be the best thing for the future of church and for the future of them, and that's okay.
Yeah, and I think, and again, that could be a whole other topic of being okay with, if you will, losing people.
Yes.
And I know as I'm not a pastor, but I can imagine as a pastor, it is difficult, no matter what, to lose people.
Incredibly difficult.
But, I do notice here the spirit of kind of you and your church here is there are other churches in this town. Yeah. And you know what? We'd love for you to be here. But if it's just not the place for you for any reason, no hard feelings.
Absolutely. Yeah. Never be in a church where you're not happy.
Yeah.
Ever. By the way, let me just make this final word on this.
Yeah.
If you've gone that far in this process, and there is a man that is that committed on the opposite side, he will be leaving.
Yeah.
Even if you hold.
Yeah.
He'll be leaving. Because if you really understand the King James culture, it's more than just what do we use in public.
Sure.
chances are a guy like that wouldn't even have made it the 6 weeks.
Yeah. I mean, you would have presented that in that opening Bible
He'd have
study,
been
and
like,
he would have been like, I'm out.
I'm out, peace. And we lost one family over the kingdom. But again, the church had already kind of divided before then.
Sure.
But one guy was kind of still hanging on. That was a Strawberry Council. And he's here, town, great guy, never caused me 1 ounce of trouble.
Yeah.
Faithfully serves in another church for a good brother.
Yeah.
Not a problem in the world. Yeah. Which is one of the last points that we'll get at next time.
Yeah. I was going to say, now we are going to transition in the next episode to talking about now you actually get this to the church.
Yeah,
You've
that's right.
gotten it to kind of the small group of leaders. Now you're taking it to the next level.
Yeah.
And so I guess we'll see you in the next episode.
Can't
here
wait.
on
See you
Church
guys next
Advance with
week.
Bryan Sams. Thanks again for joining us for this episode, and please don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd also really love it if you take a moment to leave us a 5-star review and then share this podcast with your fellow church leaders or pastor friends. If you'd like to connect with us, send us a question, learn more about Church Advance, head over to bryansams.com. That's bryansams.com. This podcast is hosted by Bryan Sams and produced by myself, Luke Clayton, and my team at mustangcrease.com. Thanks again for joining us. We look forward to having you join us in the next episode as we continue to advance the fellowship, partnership, and gospel hope amongst Bible-believing pastors and churches right here on Church Advance with Bryan Sams.